With the grace of Allah, today that I've been given this opportunity that I could come and speak to you and present some instances from the Khulafa's lives. Jamaat-e-Ahmadiyya has been blessed with Khilafat. This is a blessing which has been mentioned in the Holy Quran, that the promised Messiah ﷺ in Al-Wasiyat under Qutat al-Thaniya is mentioned in about Khilafat. He gave examples of Hazrat Abu Bakr Siddiq, Radiyallahu anhu. As the Masih Maud says, said after following revelations that there will be blessings on the Jamaat and will always remain, and it will not end so long as Khilafat is around. And I will today say a few words on this subject, on the topic of Khulafa-e-Ahmadiyyat, and I will present some of these things to you today. First of all, for any person, it's not possible for us to desire when we are born, who we are born to, and when we are born. This is all in the control of Allah. A person cannot wish that this may happen to them, but they can only pray. But what Allah Ta'ala does is entirely up to Him. It is Allah's blessings. It's Allah Ta'ala's blessings that have been allowed this opportunity to have served under many Khulafa. Khilafat started with Hazrat Maulana Hakim Nuruddin. Although I wasn't able to witness it firsthand, it began with him. There are two books which I would recommend all brothers read. Mirqatul Yaqeen, and the other one is Sheikh Abdul Qadir Sahib's. The first Caliph mentions in these books his close relationship with the Prophet ﷺ in detail. I would like to now discuss, Alhamdulillah, I've been blessed to have had the opportunity to go to Qadian, spend time there, and it's the blessings of Allah. This is the foundation of Ahmadiyyat. This is where it all began, and I had the opportunity. I had to serve in Qadian during Khalifatul Masih al-Sani's second Caliph's tenure. I was about 4 years old at that time with my parents. I went from Lahore to Chiniot to Ahmednagar and finally Qadian, after which we emigrated to Rabwa. The houses there were made out of mud, not on solid foundations, and there were a lot of difficulties at the time in Rabwa. The water was bitter, There were many other difficulties, but the promise was the second caliph, as a Muslim Maud, had been shown a dream, a revelation, that he will be there, and he made his journey over to Rabah and lived in one of these houses, lived in difficulty. I had the opportunity to see the house, and I still have memories of those days. So as a Muslim Maud, anhu, I was of a very young age during that time. I wasn't able to completely understand what I did see was that Hazrat Muslim Maud anhu used to regularly come to the mosque to give khutbahs, and I was able to witness that. I would like to just highlight some of the speeches. I've never witnessed such speeches in my life ever again. It was a very pleasing, all his speeches were very pleasing to the heart. And these speeches weren't short. These speeches were very long. But you never felt tired. Never felt tired during these speeches. They were so interesting that you were engrossed in these speeches and you would lose track of time. They were focused on the knowledge as well as the spiritual knowledge, worldly knowledge. It was fascinating to see that people would sit in front of him for several hours. It would start early in the day, will make its way all the way to Maghrib Isha, but people still sat there, listened as if it had only been 10 minutes. He used to deliver these speeches in such a way. He had a very special way of delivering these speeches. He used to put jokes in his speeches as well, which would refresh everybody. And after he would say a joke, he would go straight back to the topic. And often, very important notes were passed on to him, and he would stop his speech and read out these important messages. There was one time a lady in the Jalsaga had passed out. As a Muslim Maud anhu made this announcement, and he mentioned that this was a strange announcement I've been asked to make, whether this lady has fainted or is about to faint, and he would get many announcements of such nature. And there was one announcement which was a lady looking for a husband, and then he would explain that what happened to such women, that they're looking for their husband so desperately. So such was his nature that he used to make these announcements and then carry on with his topic afterwards. In 1955, During the speech, Zul mentioned people who were hypocrites and who were against the Jamaat and making allegations against the Jamaat. He gave the example of Hazrat Khalid bin Walid during Holy Prophet ﷺ's time, the way he served Islam with bravery, and he compared that to himself. He mentioned three: Hazrat Maulana Jalaluddin Shams, Hazrat Maulana Abdul Latif Sahib, and Malik Abdul Rahman Sahib. Three individuals he mentioned who said they had the status of Khalid bin Walid in defending Islam. It was a strange feeling I had at that time. For me as a child, it was a strange feeling that as a Muslim mentioned these things from his in these speeches. At that time, my father, one of those individuals was my father, he brought home some sweets, and he mentioned that I was poor. I went through a lot of difficulties. I didn't have much. And through all the difficulties and struggles that he'd faced, that a Khalifa has mentioned his name as a defender of Islam Ahmadiyyat. And at that point, he started crying. There were tears coming out of his eyes. And during the end of the Hazrat Muslim Maud's Khilafat, he was unwell. One day, my father and the three brothers, we were allowed a mulaqat with Hazur. Hazur was unwell. He was laying down. We weren't able to speak to him much, but we were blessed to have had the opportunity to see him. We were able to come close to Hazur, and my father at the time asked for blessings for us. And even when Hazur was unwell, he gave his blessings and he put his hands on our heads, and we were extremely blessed to have had that opportunity, even when Hazur was unwell and laying down. There are many incidences like that. Just to see Hazur, and he was during his healthy days, he used to walk very fast. He was very quick, and there was a revelation that said that during his tenure that Jamaat will progress at a fast rate, and that also related to the way he moved. Now I'll go on to Khilafat Salsa. At the start, as the Sahibzada Mr. Nasir Ahmed Sahib, Rahimahullah Ta'ala, he was the eldest son of Khalifa Masih Sani Raziyallahu anhu. He had the blessed opportunity of Khilafat. And then in Muslim Mubarak, he was his Khilafat began. He used to study in the local college. He was serving as a principal. He used to say very engaging things and have a way of speaking. If somebody had made a mistake or had done something untoward, they used to get a fine. And the children used to, or the students used to come up to him and ask for forgiveness and a pardon for the fine. And he used to write in big letters no, and the student used to go back disheartened. But then at the same time, he used to put the money of the fine in a separate envelope, and through a separate person, he used to pass that on to the student to give to the student so he could pay the fine. And that was the love he had. Although he wanted to maintain the system that was in place, he at the same time forgave the student and provided the fine. There was an instance where I'd received a lot of medals. Some of these gold medals, they used to touch my chest. And at that time, Mirza Nasir Ahmad Sahib was a principal. He said that you should keep these medals safe from your dad. He may sell these medals and put it in an Al-Furqan. And the Al-Furqan at the time was his own magazine that he used to spend money out of his own pockets to keep it running. Another instance, we were going for hunting. There were many other people with him at the time. Mia Munawwar Ahmad Sahib, Khan Naseem, Sadianand Khan Sahib Naseem, Alam Sahib, myself and my father were there. We were traveling in a bus. It was raining. There was a lot of mud as a result of the rain. At the time, the driver said to get out and push the bus so it could be moved on. So we tried our best, but we couldn't get it out of the mud. It was decided that we'll find some leaves, some wood, something that we could put in front of the wheel so it could move the truck out, the van out. So we would scatter and gather leaves, twigs, and Mirza Nasir Ahmad Sahib, he was also taking part in this. And with all our efforts together combined, we were able to get the van out. And then we went on to have breakfast. We had breakfast, and then we went into the fields where the crops were. And we were told to let the birds fly, and then it would allow them to take aim at these birds for hunting. And there was one instance where one bird had flown, and everybody aimed and shot towards it. We quickly ran to pick it up. It had been injured, and then at the time they would quickly put the bird out of his misery. But an interesting discussion had ensued. It was interesting, everybody was claiming that they were the ones responsible. And there was quite a jovial mood, everybody had taken part in it. There was a very memorable mulaqat with Hazur. It was in Masjid Mubarak. He came from the college. He went to the masjid. I was at the corner of the row in the saf, and he joined slightly late. At that time, he was wearing his turban. And he was, Imam Sahib says that when Hazur finished his namaz, I would remain there and I would congratulate Hazur on wearing the turban for the first time. When Hazrat Mirza Nasir Ahmed became Khalifa, and there were many instances that I remember after coming back from London to Rabwa. During Khudam-e-Ahmadiyya Ijtima in Rabwa, he inaugurated the Ijtima himself. And when I had the opportunity to go to Japan after the event, as I said, the Majlis Khudam-e-Ahmadiyya over there, all the bookings have been made, the programs have been drafted. When I went to Hazur, there was a gentleman sitting next to them, next to Hazur. Hazur introduced them. Hazur introduced me. I was sitting next to Hazur, and he introduced me to a gentleman close by. And he said, first he was in the east. Now I'm sending him to the west. As a Khalifa Masih Salis, Rahmatullah Ta'ala, never he didn't divulge in idle talk, and he would also always clear. He would also mention that this is not something that we should be involved in, any sort of idle talk. During my time in Japan, I was getting ready to go back to Pakistan. Hazur came. We were looking to purchase a coat, and I got Hazur asked whether we would get ready to do that. So we went to a shop. We looked at many coats. He pointed towards a coat in a hanger. He put it on top of his achkin, and he stood in front of the mirror, and he said, "This is fine. Let's pay and let's go." Imam Sahib said that was such a quick. He didn't waste any time. He found what he wanted. He didn't waste any time of Khilafat, and he moved on to do Jamaat work. In South Wales, Tintern Abbey, the Jamaat had arranged a picnic. Hazur came to the picnic. During this period, Hazur had taken a camera out of his pocket of the brand Leica, which was worth a lot during those times. He'd asked for a picture to be taken in front of a landmark, a famous landmark, in front of the abbey, the old structure of the abbey. Hazur took a picture from his photo, and he asked me, well, what should be the title of this picture? Everybody was silent. Everybody remained quiet. He then himself, he mentioned the guests of the ruins. And he'd done it in such a light-hearted mood. And he'd mentioned that we should remain that way, light-hearted in our approach. So when, after the passing away of Hazrat Mirza Nasir Ahmad, Hazrat Mirza Tahir Ahmad became Khalifa in Masjid Mubarak. Mirza Tahir Ahmad Sahib Khalifa Mzir Rabi, Rahmahullah Ta'ala. He took part in many question and answer sessions. After a few days of his inception, of him becoming Khalifa, there was a lot of opposition against Jamaat. Soon after him becoming Khalifa, there was an ordinance passed as well in Pakistan. They were stopped from giving khutbahs, sermons, praying, passing the message of Islam on. There were very difficult times. Hazur prayed. It was a very difficult time. They weren't sure what to do, whether to stay, to go to another country. There were many discussions, and it took many days to decide. But one thing I would like to mention, 29th and 30th April in the evening, I was working as a Mubalig, Mir Jamaat, Imam Masjid in London. When I received this phone call late at night, the Hazur was going to be traveling over to London. This was around 3 a.m. in the morning, and I was told over the phone that Hazur will be arriving at 8 a.m. At that time, I was extremely worried, concerned that, you know, within less than 5 hours, Hazur will be coming, and a big responsibility on our shoulders. I prayed, I offered Nafafil prayer, and after which made arrangements. Although if I carried on describing these periods, it would take me many hours. But I'd just like to mention a few things. During this period, we made all the arrangements, we cleaned all the offices. I personally myself, with my wife, cleaned the offices, made the arrangements from 3 a.m. to 5 a.m. for Fajr, until for the prayer, Fajr prayer. We had the limited resources we had at the time to make the arrangements. And then we were worried that which car should we bring Hazur to the mosque. My personal car wasn't in such a shape to bring a Khalifa worked in it. At that time I was worried, thinking what would I do? We decided we would hire a car at the airport. Chaudhry Nawaz Sahib came at that time. There was a arrangement already made. There was a brand new Mercedes car was parked outside, in which Hazur would be picked up. And I was amazed at that time that now, not minutes ago, I was concerned how we would bring Hazur back to the mosque from the airport, and Allah Ta'ala made arrangements for it. Hazur made his way safe and sound to the mosque. Hazur met everybody, and at that very night offered a sermon. One thing I'd like to mention, Hazur asked, the very first question he asked in the car, Hazur asked about namaz, what time it is. And he was concerned that he would miss the namaz. And when I mentioned it was 1 p.m., he mentioned, oh, that's good, we'll make it in time. Hazur spent 19 years in London. 21 years in total, 2 in Pakistan and 19 years in London of his Khilafat. In 1989, the year of the Jubilee, of the 100-year Jubilee of the foundation of Jamaat. A Jalsa had been held. A Sahabi of the Prophet Messiah Islam had invited Maulvi Sahib, especially from Rabba, to bring him to London so he could take part in this Jalsa. And Hazur himself, went to pick him up from the airport. He was a very elderly man, very frail. Hazur brought him back and sat him down on the sofa in his office. I spoke to Hazur at the time over the phone, and I mentioned to Hazur that Hazur, Maulvi Sahib had arrived, and Hazur put the phone down. I was thinking that Hazur would say to bring him in. He'd immediately put the phone down, and I was concerned, maybe Hazur is busy, maybe something's going on. But everything was clear in a few seconds. As soon as the phone had gone down, the office door had opened, and Hazur, with a lot of he sat down with Hazrat Maulvi Hussain Sahib on the sofa and embraced him. And then he helped him up. And then he took him into the office with him. But before going in, Hazur looked at me and said, "This is not Maulvi Sahib's job. This is not Maulvi Sahib's job to come to me. It's my responsibility to go to him. He's a Sahaba. He's a companion of the Prophet Islam. That it shouldn't be that he comes to me. I should go to him." And he lived his life in that manner. He always lived a simple life. And during one instance where he'd met a member of parliament, he came to his office. I was with the member of parliament. We were sitting in the dining room of Hazur. We sat down, and Hazur, according to Surah Nabwi, he came with the member of parliament, came down the steps with the member of parliament, came outside, and said to the member of parliament, "Where is your car?" Hazur was hoping to take the member of parliament to the door of the car and show the guest the respect. And Hazur wished that he would take the member of parliament to the car. And he was querying where the car was and where the driver was. The member of parliament mentioned. He smiled and said, "You mentioned that I didn't come in my car, I came on my bicycle." Hazur smiled. Hazur didn't say anything. So he then asked, Hazur asked, "Where is your bicycle?" He mentioned it's tied outside with a chain. So Hazur, he said, "Let's go." He went with the member of parliament. The member of parliament unlocked his bicycle, put the helmet on, put the vest on. And then when Hazur stayed there until the member of parliament was ready to leave. And he said goodbye to the member of parliament and left. That was his nature. He was such a simple nature. He wanted to pay respects that were due to any guest. In 1989, during the Jubilee, there's a big hotel Grosvenor Hotel. Jamaat had received some member of Lords, member of Parliament over there, and other guests. So Jamaat had held an event for these members, and Hazur gave such a speech in that hotel that I remember it to this day. The way he introduced Jamaat-e-Ahmadiyya, the basis of the Jamaat, and the purpose of the Jamaat, and the message of the Jamaat, he said it in such a way that was so powerful that I still hear it in my ears. Another very interesting incident. One such incident, from the family of the Hazrat Masih Maud, they requested Hazur to make announcement in the mosque. That person lived in another country. Hazur said, I won't be able to make this announcement, but he insisted that please, you mentioned that if you can't make the announcement, then I will be your advocate. If you can be our advocate. And then I was given the message to give this announcement. And it was a big test for me. That what should I say in this announcement? It was a big test for me because I wasn't sure how to ask Hazur. And according to the family of that this will be broadcast live on TV. That this will be done live on TV. This will be watched by everybody. And I will be an advocate as an advocate in this speech. I was concerned after the namaz. I was towards the back, and I will be advocate in this nikah. And the normal way is that you move towards the right and sit near the mihrab, and Hazur moved towards the right and stood up. And I thought maybe Hazur had changed his mind and was going to be the advocate for this nikah. It happened in the past that Hazur realized during the announcement of a nikah that it was for such a person that had I known, I would have done it myself. Hazur stood up. Hazur asked me to make the announcement for nikah. I stood up in my area where I was sitting, and Hazur came and sat in the first line, and I'd been ahead, and Hazur was sitting in the first saf, the first line, and it was a very strange feeling for me. And now I was in such a situation that Hazur was sitting in front of me, and I had to make this announcement with Hazur sitting in the front. And when the time came to ask Hazur, I asked him about the Hakmer with the names of the boy and girl. At that time, Hazur, it became a big test for me at that time. And when I asked the question, Hazur stood up straight after me asking this question, and it was, I was astonished. The other party stood up and they accepted, and Hazur stood up straight after and said, I accept. And it was such a strange feeling for me but that had such an effect on me. Hazur Rahmatullah, he was such a humble person, and then he wanted to maintain the nizam, that he couldn't make the announcement if he was going to be the advocate. So he had to ask me to make the announcement so he himself could be the advocate for that nikah. At one time, I went to meet Hazur, and when I finished the mulaqat and when I stood up, there was nobody there apart from me and Hazur. Hazur said, I mentioned that there's one line that I don't understand. And when I recited it to Hazur, Hazur said, no, this is not the way it should be. And it cleared the misconception. And Hazur could have corrected me in front of everybody in the mosque, but he didn't. But he was our master. He did highlight that I had made a mistake in my English translation, but he did it in privately, so that nobody else will be aware of my mistake. He did it in such a beautiful way and highlighted that I needed to correct myself. Another interesting incident is when Hazur went to Spain for the inauguration of Masjid Bisharat. When he went, he came back to London. The South Hall Jamaat had hired a hall and invited Hazur. Hazur was sitting on the stage in that hall when the event had started. Somebody was asked to deliver, recite the Holy Quran. Imam Sahib was reading a portion from the Holy Quran. The Quran Kareem, the ayats from the Holy Quran are all very blessed and very important. But Hazur mentioned that Hazur noticed that this wasn't an appropriate verse to be recited at that moment. But Hazur didn't say anything at that time. Hazur, there was a Hafiz Sahib sitting nearby whose tilawat Hazur used to enjoy from Baba. Hazur pointed towards Hafiz Sahib and said, if you could come and recite something. Hazur, the Hafiz Sahib stood straight up and went straight to the pulpit and recited. He could have admonished the reciter of the verses initially, but the way he managed this beautifully, he got somebody else to deliver another tilawat. And Hazur, after the tilawat had finished, the Hafiz Sahib was walking off. Hazur in loud voice mentioned Jazakumullah Jaza, and that was the beautiful way Hazur used to correct any mistakes without admonishing anyone directly. It made his point. Hazur had mentioned somebody who'd been persecuted, that we should deal with somebody who's been persecuted with humanity. And they were brought to a mosque, and they were given good food. They were dealt with properly, and they were allowed a mulaqat with Hazur so they could be spiritually refreshed. In Luton, this was in Luton, and they've been shown a mosque. They've been given good food. And to help them financially, these individuals who'd been persecuted in Pakistan, that they were given some financial aid with a lot of love and a lot of attention. It was a difficult situation for them. Some were injured. The clothes were ripped. These were the type of situation that these individuals were in, and with Hazur sat them down with a lot of love and attention, spoke to them, and I could tell that Hazur wasn't satisfied. Hazur had given them food, had given them attention, love, given them money. But Hazur still didn't look satisfied, and Hazur said, "Just wait a moment." Hazur went off. We were waiting for Hazur. Hazur went to his personal residence, and then a couple of minutes later, Hazur came back, and Hazur had carried as many clothes as he could in his hands, and he opened the door. Hazur came inside. Hazur put all the clothes that he had in his hands on the table, and he said to these people who've been persecuted with ripped clothes, with nothing, they all came forward. Hazur said, "Take whichever clothes you want from these." They all had an opportunity to try those out. Some was small, some were big, but the clothes weren't enough. So Hazur went again. Hazur opened his wardrobe again in his personal house. He asked his family members to bring more clothes down from his own wardrobe. So he brought another pile of clothes. Then all these individuals tried on all the clothes in the pile, sweaters, coats, hats, whatever they could get their hands on, they tried it on. And I witnessed all this. And these people were kings, that they were able to try get blessings from Hazur. And through this gesture of Hazur, everybody's needs were fulfilled. This was such an incident. I think Hazur brought all his clothes from his wardrobe, apart from the stuff he was wearing. He brought everything else to present to these people. I think for almost 2 months, Hazur had continued to use the same machkin as he'd given all his other clothes away. He wore that same machkin for 2 months until more could arrive from Pakistan. And that was the way he dealt with the love he showed. One day he went to a lake. There were a lot of ducks in the pond. Sorry, a pond, not a lake. Hazur used to give bread to give these birds some food. The birds used to gather around him, and this was food he'd collected himself and brought with him. And these birds used to gather around him, and he used to give the food to these ducks. And this used to happen over and over. He mentioned that you should continue this. And he said that somebody should always go and give them food, whether it's from the security team, or from his other teams. And one day he couldn't go for whatever reason, and it happened that another worker was not able to go on that day. After Fajr prayer, Hazur came out of the mosque and then Hazur was startled that he could hear ducks from a nearby hedge, and all these birds had come near Hazur. And Hazur had said that looks like they haven't had their food today. And Hazur said that open the kitchen, bring whatever's inside and bring it and give it to these birds. Hazur stood in front of the accommodation. The birds gathered around him and they were making a lot of noise. And then at that time, Hazur got whatever it was in the kitchen. He broke up the bread, he broke up whatever was there and gave it to these birds. And Hazur was astonished that how did these birds know where I live? And it's the blessing of Allah that they wanted to seek these birds wanted to seek the blessings, and they came looking for Hazur just to seek that blessing, to be fed from his blessed hands. In another incident, a friend of the Jamaat, he used to write well, he used to do very good speeches, deliver good speeches. He wrote a poem. He was very happy with this poem he'd written. He used to often come to the offices. He mentioned that I'd written a poem and I've sent it to Hazur as well. And Imam Sahib said that that's very good. Now, I didn't know what the poem was and what the topic was. A few days later, Hazur, he mentioned that Hazur really enjoyed my poem and he'd written back about it. He'd written back to me. Then I asked the gentleman, what has Hazur written? He was quite pleased. He was quite satisfied. He said Hazur wrote that with Hazur used to mention in such a way. He had a way of writing and speaking that the person was very pleased. He was a gentleman who enjoyed the kitchen food a lot. Whenever there was some event going on, he used to always enjoy coming and eating. He used to, during these events, used to come close to Hazur, just to see Hazur, be close to him. And this gentleman, he was a cook. Sorry, he was a cook of this food. And this gentleman used to go stand near Hazur in the hope that Hazur would notice him. And every time Hazur used to give him compliment for his food, and the food was indeed good. And one time, sweet rice zadda had been cooked. Hazur one time during an event mentioned that you should put a decent amount of, you should put plenty of sugar in the rice. And the gentleman called him with his name. He came to Hazur. He was thinking that Hazur was going to give him well done, recognize him for his food, and he was feeling proud when he got near Hazur. And Hazur said, "You've done a fantastic job today. You've made such a dish today that any diabetic person can eat, because the sugar content was low." And Hazur had said, you prepared something that every diabetic could eat, and that gave the cook an idea that there was lack of sugar in that. I'll move on to Khulafa-e Khamsa now, and this is such a period in history that's still ongoing. Every Ahmadi prays that this Dawr Khilafat, this time of Khilafat, continues for a very long time and is blessed. One time, 19th April 2003, was the Khulafa-e-Ahmadiyyat Rabbi passed away, Rahimahullah Ta'ala. There was a difficult period straight after for the announcement of the new Khalifa. And according to the traditions of Jamaat, during that time, between the announcement of the new Khalifa, was a very tense time, very uncertain times. The proceedings had begun in Rabwa and in London. The process had begun on the evening of the 20th April 2003. Jyoti Nasir Sahib came from Rabwa to London. The next day, in the evening, the preparations were made. I was blessed to have had the opportunity to serve as a secretary for these arrangements. During this period, a committee was brought and sat down on the 22nd of April in Fazl Mosque, the first time ever. Outside of Pakistan, outside of Masjid Noor, Masjid Mubarak, there was in Fazl Mosque, the Khalifa was announced. Was a Khifta al-Khamis, with very humble, very down to earth. He came. He was announced. Not many people knew him. Not many people were acquainted with him. And after a day, Zuhr one day came through the door, and there was a khadim stood at the door, and he stopped Huzur and said, he inquired who Huzur was. He wasn't aware of Huzur. Huzur didn't say anything. At the time, my big brother, my elder brother, Shahid Sahib, Shahid Sahib was with Huzur. He said to the khadim that this is, you shouldn't have stopped him, and he'd allowed him in. Huzur said that here nobody knows me. Huzur said in a humble way that nobody knows me. And after Isha on the 22nd of April, the Majlis-e-Intikhab took place. The proceedings took place. When Huzur's name was presented, the voting took place. And when Huzur was asked to come forward to take the bat, during that proceeding, some very senior members of Jamaat were there. Huzur had gone pale in the face, and we all felt that it was a weak. Everybody was feeling weak. Huzur put on the Al-Salahu Bikafin Abtahu ring. He wore the Hazrat Masih Maud Salam's coat. He gave a short address. He took the bat. The words were recited after him. And then other people were allowed in to take the bat. There were around 11,000 people outside waiting. The masjid was too small to fit everybody in. At most, you could only fit about 100 people. So people were asked to come in and then allow others to come in as well. There were a lot of people outside. And there wasn't much space for people in the mosque. They were outside, inside. Hazur said at that time, and Hazur said, please be seated. That was the first instruction from Hazur. And as soon as Hazur said that, and I can say not only people that were inside and outside the mosque, throughout the world that were watching live, everybody sat down. And this is a sign of Allah that just a few moments before, Hazur was just another member of Jamaat, another worker of the Jamaat. Moments later, he had been given the responsibility of Khalifa-e-Waqt. And straight after that, as soon as he said these words, everybody sat down. And I've been told by numerous people that people who were watching on TV, when they heard these words, they sat down as well. And this is atat, this is obedience to Khilafat. As soon as somebody who'd been appointed as a Khalifa, Allah Ta'ala gives the blessings to that person, he gives such blessings in his tongue, in his speech, that as soon as he says, as Hazur said a word, that the Jamaat Ahmadiyya all stood down, sat down, and when he asked them to stand up, he would stand up as well. And in 2008, Khilafat-e-Ahmadiyyat's first Jubilee took place in the Excel Arena in London. It was hired, all the arrangements were made. And Hazur came. Hazur gave a speech, a wonderful speech. It was not something that was ordinary. He addressed all the Ahmadis around the world. There were live broadcasts in Qadian, London, and Rabwah. Everybody was watching around the world. Hazur addressed them. Hazur took a pledge that we should always be loyal to Khilafat. And Hazur recited the pledge, and it left such a emotional, everybody was left in an emotional state, and the spirits were high. Spiritually, it was uplifting. Now, there are many people who are fortunate enough to come and meet Hazur from across the world, from around the world, and Hazur meets all these individuals from around the world. He meets them with love, he gives them a lot of attention and care. And Hazur can be firm when he needs to, and he can be loving when he needs, when required as well. Hazur has, in his previous Friday sermon, gave many examples about Khilafat and with Khalifa-e-Waqt and the love of Khilafat and Khalifa-e-Waqt, and he mentioned the times, and I would like to mention a few of these incidences. After the first Jalsa in Islamabad, after the Hazur was appointed Khalifa, there was a cabin in Islamabad. Hazur wanted to see the inside of this cabin during inspection. Somebody tried to open the door but was unable to open it. It was locked. And and the humble nature of Huzur and the light-heartedness. Huzur noticed it was closed. He mentioned to the youngster to go and find the key. Huzur mentioned that when Huzur mentioned that when we don't want something to be seen, we lose the key. The youngster wasn't able to find the key, so he asked Huzur to come and see through the window what was inside the cabin. Huzur said that it's not my nature to look inside a house or a place without permission. And there was a lesson for the youngster and everybody around him. The love that Huzur shows to the children, it's exemplary. All the Khulafa have always older, as well as the elders, the youngsters, but all the Khulafa have given special attention to children, the love they've given to them. In a very interesting Huzur. The progress that Jamaat has made is astonishing. It's now established in over 213 countries, 70 plus languages. The Holy Quran's been translated by the Jamaat. The Jamaat is progressing in every facet of life, in education, in service of mankind. But even in the little things, Huzur shows a lot of love to the youngsters. There was at an event, somebody was eating food with his hands instead of a spoon. This child was eating with his hands, and after that he wished to meet Huzur, and with a lot of love he wanted to meet Huzur and meet him and shake his hands. And even though his hands were dirty from the food that he'd been eating with his hands, and the hand that wasn't clean, he put his hand forward. But Huzur at that time gave him Huzur knew that the hand was dirty, and instead of admonishing him or saying anything to the child, he kept his heart by holding his wrist instead of the hand. And the child was happy that Huzur had met him. It kept his heart, and also Huzur was able to make sure that he wasn't turned down. The child was. It was beautiful to see the way Huzur dealt with the situation. Another incident which I want to mention. Huzur started a process of Ijtimai Ameen, so in groups of doing those children who completed Quran were brought together to do a collective Ameen, to encourage other children to do the same, to complete the Quran. So these children would come as a group and Hazur would listen to each and every child's recitation of the Holy Quran. One time, was a strange thing happened. There were some children that forget to recite A'udhu Billah before the recitation of Holy Quran. They're reminded to do that, and Hazur then, with his finger, points towards the start point for the child to start from. It's beautiful to see that the love that Hazur gives these children. They come sit near him, with him, and he guides them. And when Hazur gave this one child a pointer, pointed towards an ayat, and the children normally read very happily, and there's some children that aren't able to read as well. There was one child, he wasn't as comfortable at reading the certain ayat. He got stuck up on the first bit, and then when Hazur gave him some guidance, he got stuck in another bit, and it happened a couple of times. Hazur never showed any impatience or didn't discourage the child. He in fact helped the child along. Hazur, very in a light-hearted mood, asked the child, "Are you here for the Ameen or for Bismillah?" Bismillah is something something that you start the Holy Quran with. Hazur, in a light-hearted manner, asked the child, "Are you here for the Ameen or are you here for the Bismillah to start the Quran?" Some other incidents I would like to mention. With the grace of Allah, during this tenure of Khilafat, Allah Ta'ala has blessed us with a lot of progress, a lot of blessings. Anyone who is able to see, anyone who's able to impartially see the progress of Jamaat, the guidance from Allah, and the responsibilities of this Khilafat, the way Hazur has managed these, we can only be left astonished how he's managed all these things, the love he's shown, the detail, the attention he's given, and he's always able to smile. And just from looking at Hazur, it brings satisfaction in people's hearts. Hazur, day and night, spends his time in the service of Jamaat Ahmadiyyat, and he's never stepped away. He's never stepped back. He's always progressed. He's always given time well and above what anyone can expect of him. The two things I want to mention: if there's any extraordinary ability that Allah Ta'ala blesses his Khalifa, this is evidence of an extraordinary man, somebody who can give all this time. One Mufti Muhammad Sadiq in Philadelphia, America, he wasn't allowed in. He did a lot of tabligh, there was a time where people weren't allowed into cities in many countries. And there are many incidences where Hazur has traveled around the world, and many cities, key to the city as a gesture, keys are given to Hazur as a gesture to show that this city is for you to go in and spend time there. And these are the blessings that Allah Ta'ala has given to Khilafat. These things never happened before, and the difficulties we face in the past. So Allah has blessed us with Khilafat, and Allah listens to the prayers of Khalifa, of every Khalifa, and accepts the prayers of the Khalifa. And this has been evidenced by the progress of the Jamaat and the way Jamaat is progressing day by day. I would like to mention a recent event. These days, coronavirus it's been spreading around the world. A lot of people are passing away. A lot of people are suffering from it. A lot of governments are worried. A lot of restrictions are in place. A lot of things are happening. During this period, an Ahmadi had been infected by the coronavirus. It's been mentioned in various publications. So, Ibrahim Khalaf Sahib, it was this gentleman who'd contracted the virus. For 1 week, he was in intensive care, after which he'd recovered and given shifa. He's an Arab friend. He's a sincere member of Jamaat. His wife requested for prayers. A lot of other brothers requested for prayers for his health. Hazur used to regularly ask for his health, how he was doing, and on a daily basis he was provided a report. And initially, during the first few days, his health was deteriorating, and every day his wife had been writing to Hazur regularly for prayers, and one day she was extremely concerned, and Hazur, and I just want to point this incident out just to show the truthfulness of Hazur and the blessings of Khilafat and the blessings of Allah. Hazur sent a message back. Go tell Reem, he was the wife of Ibrahim Khalaf Sahib, that Ibrahim will be fine. Nothing will happen to him. He will be, with the blessings of Allah, of good health. And Hazur said these words, and this was conveyed to his wife. The Hazur, and she told Ibrahim, Khalaf Sahib, the Hazur has said this, so we have nothing to worry about. And nowadays we know that this virus is not treatable. And how can somebody, a Khalifa, after prayers, has said with clarity that nothing will happen? And these are the blessings. And these are the things that are evidence of the acceptance of a Khalifa's prayers. There are some other things I would like to mention. Whoever Allah appoints as a Khalifa, Allah keeps firm on the word of the Khalifa. Allah gives him the guidance And whatever comes from the mouth of a Khalifa comes true, and Allah makes sure of that. And I've seen such things in front of my own eyes. In one incident, I went with my wife to Spain. I stayed there for a week. It was Jummah time, and I was getting ready to translate Huzur's khutbah, as that was my responsibility. And I had mentioned to Huzur in advance that I would be able to do the translation from Spain. Huzur had agreed and allowed me to go. The Jamaat had made arrangements in Bisharat Mosque in Spain. I was ready to carry out the translation. In the morning, I got a message from London that the translation will be done from London, not Spain. I felt a bit down. I felt a bit confused, and nevertheless, the decision had been made by Huzur. And a little after that, there was a storm, a big storm that had hit that area, and it shook the foundations of the mosque. The TV aerials, the TV signal had gone, and we weren't able to watch the khutbah live. Although they managed to fix it, but then another wave of the storm hit, and as a result, the signal was lost again. And it happened 3 times. And at that time, I contemplated that Allah Ta'ala knew that this was not going to happen from Spain, and had given the guidance of Huzur that this should be done from London. And this is an example that Allah Ta'ala is able to guide his beloved Khalifa. I'd like to mention a few other things. 2 years ago, during Jalsa Salana, we presented in front of Huzur the people who can recite poems. There was one name, Ismatullah Sahib from Japan. He's a very good reciter of poems, and whenever he comes to UK, he recites. And we presented his name, and Huzur responded. And Huzur didn't agree to Ismatullah Sahib's name, but he had accepted the other reciters, and we were surprised to not see the approval of his name. Anyway, regardless, that was the decision of Khalifa Waqt. And what happened 2 days before Jalsa, from Japan, we got some information that Ismatullah Sahib was really unwell, that he wouldn't be able to travel to Jalsa. And they were trying to contact us to let us know that he won't be able to travel and won't be able to recite the poem. They weren't aware of Huzur's decision at the time. And Huzur had been guided by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that Ismatullah Sahib won't be able to come and recite the poem. This is another divine example. Another example I'd like to mention is last year, just before Jalsa, there's usually an inspection by Huzur. I was near Huzur at the time. Huzur was looking at his watch. We have a lot of time. I can get to mosque. I can get back to mosque. Huzur said, I'm going to Fazl Mosque. I will pray over there. And you will pray here. And I'd understood from that I will remain here. As you mentioned that you would pray here. Usually, the Imam Masjid, which is my responsibility usually, in Fazl Mosque. And Hazur's wording usually is, yeah, aap namaz, you should pray. The wording was slightly different. Normally Hazur normally said request, but now Hazur has said definitely that you will pray here. And then I got ready for wuzu. And I was doing wuzu, and I came out and I realized that the namaz had begun. And a couple of rakats had already been offered, and somebody else has started. And I had finished my Maghrib prayer at the time. And then by the time I finished Maghrib, Isha had started. And then I joined Isha prayer afterwards. And even though I was in Hadikatul Mahdi, Hazur's words came true. Hazur could have said that I could have led the prayer here, but he knew that I would offer it here, not lead it. And although the wording is slightly different, it was a sign for me that Hazur was guided. Hazur knew. Just want to mention that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala guides Khalifa Waqt and always ensures that there are many incidences which I could have told today, and there are many such incidences which could take hours on end for me to explain. That we should, the thing that I just want to highlight is that we've got the blessing of Khilafat, that we are able to meet our beloved Hazur. We are in the same country. We should pray for Hazrat Khif the Masih ibn Nasir Aziz. And we should do our best to listen and adhere and obey the instruction of Khalifa. And may Allah give us the ability to adhere to the wishes of Hazur and follow his guidance. Ameen. Rabbi Sahib is just thanking Imam Sahib for his time to give us some incidents from the life of Khulafa.
On this occasion, I would like to thank the IT team for making this program possible, and Amar Ahmed Sahib provided guide.
Please join me in silent prayer, and that please remember Hazur in your special prayers. Ameen.